It's not as simple as saying the articles or the shareholders agreement. Let me explain. In this video, we will answer the question of, does a shareholders agreement override the articles? Make sure to stay until the end of the video to find out how you can decide which document overrides which. Now, before we get started, let me just very quickly introduce myself. I'm Zoppi, an English qualified solicitor and the managing director of Zoppi, my law firm. And on YouTube, my goal is to make business law easy. Now, there are a few things that we need to do from a due diligence perspective to be able to answer the question of which document overrides which. Mostly, we need to determine whether the shareholders agreement and the articles are legally binding. Taking the shareholders agreement first, the standard contract law rules apply as to what makes a contract legally binding. I'm going to link a video right here that tells you exactly which elements need to be present for the contract to be legally binding. But in short, you need to have an offer, an acceptance, consideration that is being exchanged, certainty of terms, so the parties must know what they are agreeing to, and all of the parties must have the intention of being legally bound by that contract. Instead, when it comes to the articles of association, we need to consider a few more things. First thing is we need to determine whether the articles in question are the model articles that were adopted upon incorporation of the company, and they are the model articles that Companies House makes available for any company to use. If that is the case, then we should be able to safely assume that those articles are indeed legally valid. So let's set that to the side. What needs further analysis is if the company was incorporated, for example, with model articles of association, and then later on adopted a new bespoke set of articles of association. In that case, we need to analyze whether the company followed a specific procedure and if they followed it in a compliant way to properly adopt these new articles of association in compliance with the Companies Act 2006. Now, I understand that can sound quite daunting, but in brief, this is really what should have been followed. First, there should have been a board meeting of the directors of the company. They should have taken minutes of that meeting to approve the adoption of the taking on of new articles of association. Then the shareholders of the company should have voted on adopting these new articles. It should have been by a special resolution, meaning at least 75% of the shareholders, or if doing it by poll vote, which is when you vote by shares, then 75% of the voting shares. And then the relevant documents need to be submitted at Companies House, including the special resolution and the new articles of association. Now, before we discuss which document overrides which, assuming that the shareholders agreement is legally binding and that the articles of association are either the model articles or bespoke ones that have been adopted in a valid way, make sure to subscribe to my channel to continue to receive to-the-point, pragmatic and practical legal information. Also, if you want professional legal advice from a qualified solicitor, make sure to reach out. I have my WhatsApp somewhere here and further contact details in the description below. So which document overrides which? In brief, it is typically the articles of association that override the shareholders agreement, unless the shareholders agreement has a supremacy clause in it, which in short says that if there is a conflict between the articles and the shareholders agreement takes precedence. If that is the case, then of course the shareholders agreement takes precedence. Now, if you want to learn a little bit more about the elements of a legally binding contract to analyze whether your shareholders agreement is binding or any of your other contracts are legally binding, make sure to watch this video right here to learn about the top 5 elements of a legally binding contract.